changed the way the voting process is looked at? And what was the reason for doing that? I know I vote by mail because it just makes it a lot easier. Because on election day, with my personal schedule, and all of our personal schedules, we might have difficulty getting to a polling booth. Is there a different mindset for you guys on how you receive all that stuff?
Yes, there has been a change in trend in voting. It used to be that most voters went to the polls. However, what we're seeing is the trend for vote by mail is continuing to rise. You just had a bill, SB 450, that was passed and signed by the governor that will change the way we vote here in California. And what that will do is get rid of polling places, and we will now have what we call vote centers. In addition to that, you will be able to drop your ballot off anywhere in California and within California. That will be sent from the receiving county to the county that it's supposed to, and it will be counted. So you're going to see some massive changes in the way that we do business over the next 4 years. Now, the first counties, the first 13, 14 counties that will come into fruition will be in 2018. San Joaquin County will not be one of those. However, by 2020, I certainly plan to have voting centers throughout San Joaquin County.
Explain what a voting center is.
Okay, yes. And what a voting center is it means that you don't have to go to your precinct to vote. You will go to these voting centers. If you are a San Joaquin resident and you go to any one of these vote centers, you can vote your ballot at that vote center. Currently, we send you to your precinct to vote. However, if you vote out of precinct and maybe you don't vote on, or you vote on some things that you're not supposed to vote on because maybe you go to your neighbor's precinct and you vote on a school district or something that you're not, we actually duplicate that ballot to the right precinct and then we count that ballot. So the vote centers will allow us to vote anyone at those vote centers and count that ballot. You'll be able to vote the right ballot at the voting center. In addition to that, the technology will be such that we will know if you went to another one of those voting centers and voted. So we'll be able to keep people from, in essence, voting twice or attempting to vote twice, because we'll know that you voted, because it'll be history within our voting system, our voting management system.
Okay. You mentioned technology.
Correct.
Technology means some type of machine.
Correct.
What is your feeling on the voter ID laws, etc.? Because isn't this an ID?
Okay, what you asked me for is my feelings. My feelings don't matter. I conduct the law.
Okay, so will this be challenged by anyone? Because this has my name and information within it. If I go to a voter center and have to log in somehow, isn't that an ID?
No, when you go to, in California currently, the way it's set up, before you get to vote for your first time, a first time considered, we call it a first time federal voter. When you are a first time federal voter and you vote, you have to show ID for the very first time. When we do that, we capture your signature and we put it on file. And from that, we detect your signature. We actually compare your signature on file with the signature that you give us to make sure you are who you are. And if you are, if that signature matches, then we count your ballot.
Really? So what's the argument?
I conduct the law.
Austin, you said your feelings don't matter and you conduct the law, but you do have some strong feelings on some things. I read in one of our fellow newspapers this morning this quote from you. So I hired 2,000 people from all walks of life for election day, said Austin Erdman, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I have 20 full-timers, 150 part-timers. Yeah, we're all in it together on the fix. Sure, nobody's saying a word about it, not a thing. They're all keeping quiet. I assume you're trying to say that you aren't fixing the election, as might have been alleged. What are your feelings on this
Again, this is a writer's writing, and it's taken some of my quote, and they've written it into this context.
We don't
And
do
records,
that.
yeah, happens all the time to me. I'm never quoted right, but that's okay. In this particular case, yes, it upsets me as an election official when somebody accuses our democracy, our basis for how we live, who we are today, how streets are built, how lights are built, how our government buildings are done, who's elected, what laws we're having, and saying things like the election is rigged, exactly as some of that stuff says. I have 2,000, basically what happens on an election, so that everybody understands, is the Registrar of Voters Office puts together the election. In other words, the people come, the candidates register, and so on, and get on the ballot, qualify. Then we put together the ballot and all of the information, measures and so on, into a ballot form. On election day, we give it to actually the public to go out and conduct that election on election day. Various throughout San Joaquin County. I have 326 precincts this year. So there's 326 precincts with about 6 people at each polling location, and there's students, as well as all sorts of people from all walks of life that conduct that election.
That's 20,000.
No, 6 times 300. And so then they conduct that election, and at the end of the night, they bring that election back to me. And when you're telling me that those people are rigging the election, it turns my stomach, because I spend hours and days, and you have no idea, nights, weekends. That place is going strong. We'll be working every weekend now through the election time. And to tell me my poll workers are corrupt or rigging an election, and nobody says anything, let alone the workers that I have. I hire 150 part-time. I have 20 at least full-time people. I have news reporters there. I have people from the AP. I have people from the Record. I have all sorts. I have the U.S. Department of Justice. I have the Attorney General's office. I have the Asian Center for Pacific Law Institute. I have academias. I have all sorts of people at various locations throughout San Joaquin County watching how we conduct the election and watching the whole process all the way through. And to say that it, or even imply that that's happening, that's just not right. And because of the way we live in the United States, we're a democracy, it goes back to what Lincoln said. A democracy does not work if you don't participate. And so to me, what you're doing is you're telling people not to participate in the election because the outcome is already predetermined or preordained. It is not. As we know, we get surprises every day in the election. That's why you'll never hear me call or predict an election. That is these folks' job, not mine. You'll never see that come out of my lips because of the fact that I don't know who's going to win. I've watched elections change. With the Galgiani Berryhill race, he was above 4,000 votes. That vote flipped the other way, 3,000. I had both the Democratic and the Republican committee out of, and the Central people out of Sacramento come to my office, watch closely the whole thing. They knew before, because they do this algorithm, they knew that this was going to flip. They talked to me about it. They said, okay, this race is going to flip. And they knew the numbers before it even happened, after I released the numbers.
How do they get that information?
They watch the numbers that are released as we release them. In other words, the first numbers that you see that come out on election night all across California, those are vote by mail. The first release from any registrar of voters office are vote by mail.
Okay, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there a distinction on those initial votes between Democrat and Republican so that they can anticipate something?
No. It's simply following the numbers and looking at the trends. We have statisticians, for instance, if you go back to the Obama race in 2008, they said there was no way he was going to win it. He won at the end of the race. Obama became president for 8 years. Everyone was up in arms about the whole thing that he won. They said, well, exit polls said that he wasn't going to win. Why did he win? Well, they found out people lied. They didn't tell who they wanted because people want to keep their vote secret. They don't want to necessarily tell you who they voted for. And then we have people study what we call statement of the votes. At the end of every election, we print what's called a statement of the votes. It tracks every single vote in every precinct. So you can see whether a person voted for, against, or, and not necessarily a person, but the area they voted for or against a particular measure. So they can get an idea of certain pockets or certain areas because people go door to door and knock on doors and talk to people.
Say that again, because who's doing that? Who's monitoring that?
Statisticians, people that academia, they look at our statements of the vote and they carefully did it, and actually they published it. The press published some of those results. And there was an issue regarding that. Obama, my gosh, how did he win?
And we allow that?
The statement of the votes?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so that we know that it's to help keep elections safe. It's another way to do that. I don't know how you voted, but I can tell you how many people in your precinct voted and how they voted.
And what would the intent be of having that information with academia?
Well, academia looks at that to understand trends and how people are voting and what they're thinking. And they want to get into, the basics of our society. They're studying certain relationships with people, legislators and so on. They want to know what's going on. They want to know who's elected and why they're elected.
And precincts are determined geographically, strictly
Correct.
geographically?
Yes.
And do precincts have a maximum number of voters?
Yes.
So if you exceed
1,000
that,
voters.
1,000 in each
Yes.
precinct? I see.
Yes. I can't go over 1,000.
So as the population increases, then we have,
We split the precincts.
I see. So even though we live in the same neighborhood, we may be in completely different precincts?
Yes. And also, you may be in a water district or some other district that divides you from your neighbor across the street. Stock?
Yes, how do you maintain the integrity of the voter rolls, and what is that we exactly do to do that, integrity of voter rolls?
Yeah, the voter rolls are done through registration, and what happens is the state has now taken over voter registration rolls. It used to be done at our county, our local level. However, HAVA passed in 2003, and what happened is when they passed that, they changed and they made the states responsible for those voter rolls. It wasn't until recently, about a month ago, that the state actually took over the voter rolls here in San Joaquin County, actually in California. So now the Secretary of State owns the voter rolls. When you register to vote, whether you register online or by paper, you register through your name, which is checked against the DMV, also Social Security, as well as California Department of Corrections, to make sure that you're not a felon. Once it passes through there, then it comes back to the county and you're put on our voter rolls.
We hear about people who are dead long time ago, they are still on the voter rolls, and people who are not US citizens are on voter rolls. Is it just hot air there, or what is going on?
There can be some truth to the issues on people that have deceased that are still on our voter rolls. And the reason being is if you pass and you pass outside of California, some states like Texas will notify us, other states like Nevada will not. So in my case, I've had actually one of my employees who had her husband deceased in Nevada. We were never reported on our voter rolls that that person was deceased. So the wife of the deceased person had to let us know that that person is deceased. We are not notified any other way. And the Social Security deceased records, they're not good. So they don't necessarily capture everybody, and nor are they always correct. So yes, there can be a dead person on our voter rolls. However, for them to vote, It would be very difficult because the signature would have to match. We're either mailing them a ballot or they'd have to show up at a polling place. Most people know when you go to a polling place who you are, because after you show up a couple of times, or usually there's some people that know you because it's local, and they would know whether you're the right person or not. Or if you came in more than once trying to, you came under Smith and then maybe Jones and tried, I mean, they would notice and they would challenge the vote.
In this age of technology, can there be hanging charts any longer, especially in the California?
No, and that was ended by Congress in 2002 when they passed the Help America Vote Act. They promoted $3.2 billion to United States and Puerto Rico to invest in new voting systems. That's what we did. However, that technology is now, very old. Obviously, it's 14 years old, and it's time for it to be replaced. So we're working on that as we speak.
I wish everybody read the newspaper, but the reality is they don't, so they didn't all see our two stories. I'm sure you wish everybody read the item at the top of your column about the postage, but they didn't. We continue to get calls over this 68-cent postage. I don't know if you are.
Absolutely.
But what are your feelings going forward? Is this going to be a thing for the next few weeks, or is it getting settled out, or how are things going on that?
It's really, in my purview, it's a non-issue. And I understand what the voter, I understand how I would feel. And what happens is for the past 14 years, it's taken one stamp. Here in San Joaquin County, now, I'm not speaking for other counties, I'm only speaking for San Joaquin. It took one stamp for your ballot because we kept it to an 18-inch ballot. However, if you notice this year, you're on two ballots, two-card ballot. Okay, not two ballots, two-card ballot, okay? And you have two cards, which the USPS says is over the amount of postage necessary, so it's 68 cents to actually get that piece back. However, there was actually a news story last night and today on Channel 3 or 13, one of a couple of things that came over. The USPS, not only in San Joaquin County and California, but nationwide, will deliver your ballot regardless of postage on the ballot. So the ballot, if you drop your ballot in the mail, regardless, I will do it. And I think that I have some of those films that were on those that I showed the actual footage to the news service, about ballots without postage versus with some postage with the correct amount of postage. And some actually are putting too much postage.
How much money you will end up paying, do you think, once the election is over this time, paying the postal fee from your
Yes.
department? How much approximately?
I'm guessing about $10,000.
Dollars, that's it?
Yes.
I don't know, and also it's great to,
Any
I did not know that, it's great to read in the newspapers that, you accept all the ballots because extra stamp is not there, you're not going to count the ballot. That's a big thing to know.
But what's to stop anyone going forward from saying, hey, they said they're going to back?
Exactly.
We're just going to put one stamp on it.
Or none.
County can, or none,
Yeah.
the county
Yeah.
can pick it up.
Yeah.
I mean, you would hope that people wouldn't do that, but.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's happening.
Yeah.
Play.
And it's not, and I'm not going to be able to stop it.
No. Well, I was thinking, the envelopes that you use, that we send it back once we vote, on that envelopes it says, I think you put a stamp or something. Can't you just put there, is there a way to put at that spot saying it's one stamp or two stamps? And so that we don't have to worry about, somebody pays and somebody doesn't put two stamps on it. Can you put something there, it's two
In
stamps?
every envelope,
Yeah.
there is a flyer that says there's more postage necessary.
I
On
read
the
that,
top
yeah.
of the envelope, on the right-hand side, it says may be necessary. And the reason I say I decided to go with may, you may only decide to send one ballot back, and only one stamp is necessary.
And that's considered a complete ballot if you only send one card
Doesn't
back.
matter. You can send a card, or card 1, or card 2, doesn't matter, or both.
One thing I want to make sure is our students, feel free to ask any questions you want. It's certainly a part of this, if you have any questions.
On behalf of our students, You made a statement earlier that you said the 17 measures will or may change our lives.
17 measures that will change the way we live.
Change the way we live. Okay.
Do you want to be a reporter?
I do.
Motivate them.
Could you expound on that a little bit?
Well, if you read any of the measures, which I have here, I brought with me, let's just touch on one controversial measure, the marijuana measure. Isn't that going to change us? I mean, we're legalizing another drug in California, as maybe some of the other states, but hasn't that changed? And changed, I'm not saying in a bad way or a good way, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a change. It's a change, it's a societal change, as well as a taxation issue, as the way we live.
What is happening, can you tell us a little bit about the numbers on registration for this election versus 4 years ago versus, what are the trends as far as registration?
I have seen this is my 15th, 16th year at the Registrar Voters Office. This is the biggest, largest registration numbers I've seen ever. It's astounding. I've probably got another 5,000 in the queue that I will run before, a matter of fact, we'll be working this weekend to make sure everybody's in there, which is wonderful for me. And the majority of those, and when I say the majority, more than 50% are the millennials, or the young folks that we're seeing registering for this particular election, which is you folks. That's very exciting to me. And if I can get these folks, young folks, actually to vote instead of being discouraged and saying that the election is rigged, once I can get a voter to the voting booth, they're always a voter. You will always vote. Once you begin to vote, you vote your first ballot, you will vote every election. Your high propensity, probably better than 80%, that you will continue to vote in the future. And once you learn what that means in our society, you'll understand it's not only the people that we're voting, but it's the billions of dollars in tax money from your roads to your schools, to your lives, to how you live, to your buildings that are put up here, like in San Joaquin County, the beautiful $100 million building you see on the corner there. That's because you voted the money. The tax money's there to build it. If you don't vote for that, it won't happen. There's a library tax in the city of Stockton. That's a big deal. You may not think much, but what about the young people, the small people coming up that go to the library and start reading for the first time and get on the internet and see that? They suddenly expound into a world of information that we've exploded on.
Whoa, that's an opinion.
Yes, and I shouldn't go there.
You shouldn't go there.
But it is true.
I don't disagree with you, but that's another tax. And we're already paying taxes for that.
Right, but it's a decision that you make voting.
Agreed.
And that's what I'm trying to,
Okay.
that's what I'm trying to.
Can I just ask one?
Sure.
When you said the numbers are growing, what are the numbers? How many registered?
We probably are going to be over 325,000 voters here,
And what was
and
it?
eligible over about 410, 420 is what the Secretary of State says are eligible.
For the last presidential election, what was it?
Oh, I'd say 10, 11,000.
The growth is 10 or 11,000?
Yes.
Okay.
That's about 75% of eligible voters, somewhere in there. Okay.
According to the Secretary of State.
These kids
Yes.
are receiving information differently than we did. Okay? That's one of the reasons why we're all here anyway. And there has been a certain amount of discussion, of discourse about the media predicting results and people getting disillusioned about voting. You know, well, why should I vote? You know, so-and-so, the record's already saying so-and-so is going to win or this is going to pass. Why bother? How do you react to that?
They may have called a specific race, but for instance, there's about 35 races on the ballot. There are races that I can tell you that the media doesn't call. Those races are decided by your votes. It's as simple as that. Take Anthony Silva, the current mayor. He lost by one vote on a school board many years ago. One vote. If you look at the presidential election in Florida, I hear that, oh, it doesn't matter, there's too many votes. That was won by about 700 votes in Florida. So to say your vote doesn't count or is diluted is wrong.
Agreed. These kids need to hear that message.
I didn't hear
I
something.
said kids don't know that. Kids don't care about voting, or at least youth who are registering to vote don't care about it at all.
Or they only care about the presidential election. That's the only focus that they have. They don't know anyone else that's running for anything.
And they don't know how much it actually matters, and they don't look at the numbers of it. They think that if I had to take this time to do it, then why would I if I already know the results of it? Exactly how the media is saying how the media is predicting outcomes of it.
Right, and I think a good way to approach that is, doesn't matter who you are, you spend money, right? Whether you buy gasoline, buy a candy bar, buy a piece of paper, doesn't matter. And there's a tax on that, isn't there? Where does that tax money go? And how much money is that? And who spends it where? It doesn't seem like much when we look at things on a general basis. However, it amounts to millions, and sometimes it actually is billions of dollars, whether it be state, local, or federal government. And so when you seemingly put off to say, well, it really doesn't matter, it does. Those people that are voting are making the decisions for you.
Why do you think they don't care?
I actually don't know, because I personally know why voting is important, and I can't even vote for until the next term or next election season. So I wouldn't have.
But have you registered to vote yet?
No, I'm only
Why not?
registered.
She's
Oh,
15.
15? Oh, okay. When you're 16, you can register to
I
vote.
know.
Okay.
I feel like that they don't care because they don't know and they don't care to know. So, I think that's just why people really don't.
Do their
Does this
parents
get back
care?
to what you said earlier about
I feel
you
like
need them to vote the
generally
first time?
people
Really?
Yeah, I know. I have a bunch
Really?
of friends whose families don't care at all.
they don't care also. They don't know, so they don't care.
Okay, back up. You said at 16 they can register to vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
Our school actually has we have an area dedicated to people to go
You
vote.
may vote at age 16.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
Register
Okay.
to vote at 16, so that when you turn 18, I will send you a ballot. If your birthday is on or before the election day, you will get a ballot.
Awesome to know. I had no idea.
Do you get many 16-year-olds registered?
We're starting to a lot, yes, because I'm pushing, here in San Joaquin County, I'm probably the biggest per capita county of utilizing students. I have over 600 students going out to polling places throughout San Joaquin County. I've talked to teachers, they participate in the civic classes, and so it's really taking off. So yes, we're starting to see an uptick of that.
Is there a particular demographic that you can?
No, because the students are across the board. It's those that are participating in the classes that the teachers are pushing.
There's been some discussion on the presidential election of, and who knows if it's accurate or not, but urging supporters of various candidates to, quote, watch polling places to make sure that things are going right. Have you given any instruction to your people are voting in their garages or whatever, if there are people that are coming around with that sort of intent? What have your instructions been to?
Yes, we do this in the training we teach our poll workers and our rovers all about this issue. And this is actually every single election I have, from United States Department of Justice attorneys down to local people that are interested in the race. For instance, in the last race, Bernie Sanders, I had probably at least half a dozen to a dozen. It started with about a dozen, dropped off to about a half a dozen votes that stayed in our election all the way through to the end. And they were instructed by the Bernie party to be there. And in San Joaquin County, here, I'm particularly open and transparent. In other words, if you want to come watch any part of the election, I encourage you, come on down and watch it. If you want to see us, looking through ballots, if you want to see us when we're sorting things, if you want to watch the counting process, anything you want to watch, come on down. Now, I know some of the others want to, back you, but I will put you wherever you want to see the process. Because I believe in transparency, and I believe that if I were a person, I would want to be, other than the registrar, if I'm a voter, I want to be able to see what's going on. If I want to see, I want to see. This is an open, transparent process, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see. I want to be able to see what's going on. How are you doing
But
with
you're
election
kind
accuracy?
of talking about it at Election Central or whatever. What about out in various?
No, out at the polls. I get the Department of Justice, the Asian Pacific League. I will have attorneys there. I will have poll watchers there. I have integrity. I don't know. There's a couple, 4 or 5 groups that come to my office.
But what if Joe Q. Citizen shows up outside the?
Awesome.
They can.
They can watch.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the rules about proximity to polling places for handing out literature or signs or?
You have to be 100 feet away from the polling place if you're going to wear anything. In other words, if you come into our office and you wear an Obama shirt, we'll actually make you put something over the leave and come back, because you count an electioneer within 100 feet of a polling place. So we try to discourage that as much as possible, and most people comply in various ways.
Has there ever been any situations at any polling place where voters have been discouraged from going into a?
Not in my jurisdiction. If you call, what I have is a rover that usually is in charge of about 6 polling places. If I have a problem, I immediately call. We have a very intricate setup that I can immediately either text or call that particular rover, tell them to get over to that precinct. They're there within 10 minutes at the most, and they can usually handle all situations. And if necessary, I even personally will go out on election day.
Going back to trends, you mentioned a lot of millennials are starting to register. Is there any way to break down how many Hispanic voters are in the county, or Asian Americans, or?
Yes, I can't break that down now because that's not what I do. However, yes, we have Leading Edge, or one of those folks that actually does the breakdown of all that information. And I usually do that post-election.
Speaking of millennials, do you ever anticipate that guide going digital?
It already is.
It is.
Yes,
So
as well
can
as
you-
my sample ballot booklet. You can go into what's called an opt-out program. We won't send you the sample ballot booklet, and you can just get it online as of right now, electronically on your digital device.
Perfect. And then you don't typically think of government agencies having marketing offices or marketing budgets, but I look at these young people who say that, their peers say that their vote won't matter, so why bother? And they are media savvy. So is there any hope of reaching them via the way that they communicate? Via Twitter saying, hey, San Joaquin County says your vote matters, register and get out here.
I'm doing that right now.
Awesome.
And I'm working through Comcast and CBS, and we're doing geofencing, and so that it was within San Joaquin County. I'm trying to advertise, get out to vote. So you'll notice if you have Comcast, you'll see a banner on the bottom, vote in the November election. And after the 15-day close, which is next Monday on the 24th, you'll see that change to know where your polling place is. So then, it'll tell you where your polling place is.
Do you have a Twitter?
No, I do not. I can't, there's no way that I can do the electronic and keep up with it. And here's the problem. I've worked with the University of Pacific very closely, and once you start that process, you can't stop. And if you do, the first thing that happens, why did you stop? What's going on? What happened? Why did you not, you've been tweeting every hour. And there was actually a registrar down in Riverside, Barbara knows one, that was fired over that issue. She had a problem with her voting system. She needed to take the time to cure the problem. It took her a couple hours. And so it was a couple hours before she actually got back on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it was. And her board went crazy, said, why did you do that? And so if you're going to do that, then you need to hire people just to
Need a
do
marketing
that.
department.
Yep. And we don't have the budget for that.
Austin, I have to admit, I still like getting up at 7 in the morning with my wife before she goes to teach school, to walk down to the precinct and get our little sticker and voting. Am I becoming a dinosaur? Is that going away?
Eventually, yes.
Quick question.
I'm a dinosaur.
How many pages is that booklet?
This is 160 some pages. 160 some pages.
Yeah, people do not.
Yeah.
So read.
Short
Even like a
attention span.
3-page pamphlet, like there was a shorter version.
There is. Go
Okay.
to the League of Women Voters, look at their webpage.
But one of the problems with that is, over the course of the last couple of days, I've received 3-4 letters from the League of Women Voters on who they are endorsing for various things. So I think there's this kind of misnomer that the League of Women Voters is a
That's exactly
not,
right.
but yeah, as a thank you, a neutral organization, but they're not.
They were, and what happened was they were, and it was 8 years ago. I don't remember the exact time they changed. They were neutral, and then they started endorsing, and they started the process, and I had to completely pull that.
Is there a limit on how long ballot statements can be?
Yes, 250 words. But if you'll
And it's-
notice,
and it's
okay.
still 168 pages?
Yeah, and the statement itself are on the ballot. But if you'll notice, there's one measure on your ballot. Very interesting how the legislature did this. They put the 250-word statement, and then they put another statement underneath that. That's not me, I mean, that's the legislature that did that on the measure. But you'll notice that,
That's all right, that's all right.
You'd have to look. I forget it, I think it was, I don't know. I'd have to look at it.
But I think I agree with our students. I mean, that's a very cumbersome
Yeah.
thing
I
to
would
read.
literally never look at
No.
Like you would look at it.
that. If
But
No.
we
It
say it in a
depends
lot
on-
fewer words in the record.
Only if it were condensed.
I do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, if it was like on a phone, people would be more willing to, but it depends how it's on the phone. Like if it was an app, more often than not, people won't look at it because people like their apps to be more intuitive. And I think it's mostly it being popular, whatever platform it is on, because people don't really buy into things that aren't like popular. Like if you have an account or a Twitter account saying, "Oh, go vote, do this." If you only have 200 followers, no one's going to care. So you really just need the support from, I guess, our community to like make the account more popular or whatever, because then people will be willing to buy into
Yeah.
it.
And plus you look at that and you wonder if that's all the information you really need to know. Like,
Yeah.
is there some extra stuff that, like, maybe that extra stuff will, like, lead me to not want to read it anymore? And to think that, oh, maybe this is going to happen again in the next paragraph I read, and maybe I don't need the stuff that I'm retaining. So it's most likely, like, the main points of the measures that you really need.
When there are, a lot of what we've talked about has been presidential races, but on local races, when there are races that are, the build-up to them are particularly contentious. It could be the mayor's race this time, or one of the supervisors' races recently have become pretty combative. Does that raise any intent for you to do anything different on election day, to watch for anything?
No. No, it doesn't matter to me at all. Are there internal preparations? You bet. But I can't really discuss all of them
I
because it's
understand.
with Homeland Security as well as the FBI.
I have a couple of questions about the voting centers. One of the advantages of precincts, presumably, is people can walk to them, and that would make it much easier for people with limited means to be able to vote. If there are voting centers and more people go to them, is it going to be difficult for some people to vote, and is that what we want to do?
It's an opinion. And I will say this, you're going to get a surprise this year. Matter of fact, it should be out soon. RTE on election day this year is going to offer free transportation.
Okay, nice.
So RTE, regardless, doesn't matter where you're going, in cooperation with the Registrar Voters Office, Max Myers and myself have put this together so that RTD is going to offer free transportation, whether it be dial-a-ride or the buses on election day,
Okay.
be able to get around.
Okay, good. And then another question, there's more and more technology involved, which would seem to me that we would be able to get results faster. And yet, it seems that we don't often know the final results until sometimes 2 or 3 days later, in part because ballots can still be coming in 3 days later. Is there ever going to be a time when we'll know on election day what the final answers are, how people have voted?
Not unless it's a landslide.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I know people want to know on election day what's going on, but the reality of it is, in order to do it correctly, which means I have to count every single vote. I've heard rumors that we don't count provisional votes, or we don't count vote by mail if it's a blowout on the election. Not true. Because of the statement of the votes, we process every single vote. So, and are things going to change? Absolutely they will change. How fast? I don't know. I'm a big believer that we should push toward potentially, eventually, internet voting. However, in order to get there, we have to get Congress to fund academia to spend some time to get it secure.
So that the Russians can't go in and decide who our leaders are.
Yeah. Yes. And while they may meddle in the election, there is nothing online so that they can't meddle in the outcome of the results.
This is kind of flashing back to an old, actually, I'm gonna, I saw Roger.
Yes, could you please explain what is the process that takes place between the election day and you wait for the Secretary of State to approve it? What goes on in between? What is that Secretary of State is looking for? Is it results from each county registrar of voters, or what else goes on with it so that he or she in the Secretary of State's office can approve those numbers or those results? Isn't it? Secretary of State approves his presidential election, the Secretary of State.
No, what happens is I certify the election results at the end of the election. As long as I don't see some widespread fraud or some, as some would call a rigged election, right? If the election was conducted fairly and properly, then I would what's called certify the election, and then I present it to our Board of Supervisors, who then actually then goes further and actually certifies those results to the Secretary of State. So the initial results that are done at the end of the 28 days, that process is me being very careful and thorough on making sure that we count every single vote. And it's not going to go any faster, unfortunately for you, because of the fact that we are so meticulous and we're making sure every vote counts. And we're having to duplicate, for instance, if you go to the wrong precinct, I have to duplicate yours to the right precinct so that it's recorded in the right precinct for your voting.
This is flashing back a ways, but why didn't voting machines work, and what did you ever do with them after you got rid of them?
We still have them, they're out of
Oh,
the
really?
precincts, and you're still voting on them.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, the touch screens. But let me explain why you have the naysayers out there in black box. If you think you're going to go into our precinct and upload something into our machine and change the vote as a former Secretary of State alluded to in some of the advertisements. It's not that. We take our program, send it to the Secretary of State before we start counting, and we count. At the end, we send it to them, and it's hash marked. So we know if that has been tampered with. However, if you were talking about doing this at the electrical engineering level on the memory card, it could be done unknown. And that's a fact. I would never know. But that means you would have to give me the memory card knowing that you're going to fix X. However, you're selling me this memory card and I'm using it in future elections. But the problem is we do what's called logic and accuracy to check it. However, you could maybe set it to do something on election day or something. I mean, there would be, that's the question. Is it foolproof? No.
Yeah, Jordan, I'm having trouble with my Blu-ray player. Do you have a weird story? What are some of the weird, unusual, funny things that have happened to you over the years doing this?
Well, there's been some crazy stuff that's happened. I've had a family fight at a precinct where I've had to go in and fire the whole precinct and replace the whole board.
On election day?
On election day. Those are pretty wild. I've had some other wild stories, but since I have some young folks here, I won't explain those. But I'll leave it to your imagination what's happened. There has been some pretty wild stuff that has occurred on election day that, you know, just I'm astounded by that people would do that on election day. And that's why the schools are reluctant to give us their, even though it's mandated by law, they're reluctant to give us, you know, their use of their schools because of these crazies that go out there.
On a national election day, you know, presidential election, and this is some media's, television media declare the results, say 3 hours before the close of the ballot, you know, the ballot is closed, you know, still have 2-3 hours to go, people can be voting, they declare the results, and then how much do you think that discourages people who still have to vote? They are still saying, okay, I got 2 more hours to go to vote, you know. And
You're showing your age because
Yeah.
that's now illegal.
Yeah.
The media do not, on the East Coast, because they were 3 hours ahead of us, they would sometimes declare after they, you know, got some of the major states, but they don't do that.
What is illegal? Tell me.
No, but they do declare
Yeah.
Bill 1.
I mean,
Yes.
that-
Yes, here.
The reason I brought up is on CNN, when just before the debate was going, they're already counting the electoral college vote, 310 for Hillary, and then 170 for, you know, oh, wow, already. You know.
Those aren't election results, though. Those are
Yeah.
polling.
No.
Yeah.
But, you know, that
Okay.
has impact
Well,
on
let me give
people's
you-
minds, that's what I'm
Let me
saying.
give you some basic civics on this issue. Your primary election is done by delegates. It's actually not done by the election. It's done by delegates. Delegates choose who moves on. In the general, it's done by the electoral college. Those are the people that make the decision on who's elected. It's not done by popular vote. So you could actually win the popular vote, but lose the election.
Go, yeah.
But to win a state's electoral college, you have to win a popular vote within that state, correct?
Mostly yes. I'm going to say mostly yes.
That
Yes.
hurts. Explain.
In some of the states, not California, but in some of the other states, they're done by the electoral college. So those people get together and they decide that they're going to elect a specific, or that they're going to give their delegate vote toward a particular candidate. Democrats have went so far as to have super delegates and so on that they can announce, so your governors or whoever elected have more sway than your average electoral college vote.
Serious.
Yes.
Lighter. Can you tell us, Austin, about your educational background and your career path that led you to this illustrious position that you hold?
Sure, I went to Delta College, got my degree there, then I went on to National, I got my degree in business, and then I continued on and got my master's in public administration. And so I have a master's in public administration, and I've just been very interested in this area. And once I got over to elections about 15 years ago, elections is a funny thing. You either get the bug or you don't, because it is so much work on election time. And you, as a registrar of voters, you have to gain a thick skin, because no matter what, somebody's going to lose a race. And those people that lose a race, it's not because they didn't get enough votes. It's because I didn't count them properly, or something that I said, or something that I did. And the reality is, as we all know sitting at this table, it's because they didn't get enough votes. And usually a person that is saying something like this, what I mainly hear when a person first begins a school board race, for instance, and they lose, oh, well, the election's fixed. But after a person has been through a few elections and they've seen what's going on, they know. They've either won or they lost by the vote.
So I can imagine the frenzy in your office this time of year. So after the election is over, after it's certified, you take a 6-month vacation?
I wish. No, actually, elections take quite a long to prepare. I'll have an election, I think, in April of next year. I have one or two in June. I have another one in November. So immediately we're beginning to prepare for those next elections. You never get really much of a downtime. And when elections are going on like right now, I guarantee you'll be able to reach me 24/7, either at my office or some of these folks have my personal cell. They'll call me on the weekends, they'll call me on Saturday, they'll call me on Sunday, they'll call me at 10 o'clock at night, they'll call me at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is okay, that's part of the job, right? And that's all right, to ask questions specifically maybe about what's going on or the issues, or they read something in the record, like this issue about the postage issue. Hey, are my votes got what's going on? And I explain it to them and then they feel good about it. So, no, it doesn't really let down. And then I like to work with the University of Pacific. I like to work with kids. I want to encourage people to vote. I like to get out there and let people know that this, this is basic for our democracy here in the United States. This is how we live. This is what creates our military, our elected officials, everything. And so I feel like I'm part of the fundamental base of what happens in the country, and specifically to this area. And whether I vote for or against a particular issue, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I know that the majority voted on that issue, and that's what they decided, and we accept it and move on.
Have super PACs changed anything on how you go about your business?
No, other than a super PAC is required by the FPPC to report to our office when they spend or raise money. So we do keep track of that. And because I'm the filing official for San Joaquin County, everything comes through my office. So if you raise money for a candidate or a measure or whatever, then you would come to my office and we'd help you get set up.
Oh,
Yes.
We obviously do a number of stories on filing periods as far as how much money has been raised. Can you just kind of describe your office's involvement in that procedure? How does that work with candidates and the reporting?
Yeah, we don't really do anything other than the candidate is required, if they're going to raise $1,000 or more, super PAC or a PAC or any issue is going to raise more than $1,000, the FPPC requirements is that you file your 410s and 460s. In other words, you say where you're going to spend, raise where you've got the money and where you're spending the money. The FPPC has a $100 limit that says, well, under 100 you don't really have to report. However, things are getting tighter with the FPPC. About 5 years ago, the FPPC said, we're going to make enough fines to actually help or pay for our division for enforcement. And as you can see today, the fines are big, and it doesn't matter whether it's something as simple as what I have to file, which is a Form 700, which is my personal disclosure, or a 460 for a candidate that explains where they got their money. They have to say where they got the money, where they're spending the money. And what it is, it's tried to allow everyone, if you're interested in a candidate and you want to see where the money came from, you can see the paper trail.
Okay, to take that a step further, who polices signage? And let's say there's a particular candidate who says that they are endorsed by so-and-so.
Okay, let's just stop at the political signs. That is done by the Community Development Department of the specific area. In other words, if it's a county issue, then the county community development is responsible. If it's in the city's community development is responsible for that sign. If it's the signage itself, it's the FPPC to make sure that their candidate committee is on that sign. If it's placed on federal property, then the federal people are involved. If it's placed on state property, it's usually Caltrans. However, there are some other state offices that there has been political signage on, and the state is part of that. Yes. So it depends on where it's at and what specifically you're talking
But
about.
your office really isn't involved?
No, we don't.
Not at all?
Not at all. We just refer them to wherever.
And what was the second part?
Well, what I was saying was, I guess what I was asking was, let's say Joe Smith is endorsed by firefighters or something, and that's not a true statement. How?
That would be reported to the FPPC, and the FPPC would go after them.
Go after the candidate?
Yes, or the candidates committee, whoever put those signs up.
Right.
Yes,
Has that ever happened?
yes. Yes. Yeah, even one of the cities, and I think, I forget, it was up north, a city, for instance, put out signs and used taxpayer dollars for a measure that they put on the ballot. It was reported to the FPPC. The FPPC fined the city or the district.
That's a no-no?
That's a no-no.
So the city of Stockton could not put out for measure in the library?
No.
They can't do it
No. They can form a super PAC, or people can form a super PAC, in other words, separate from the city, but they can't use city dollars.
So when do you vote? When do you vote?
I vote by mail, actually.
How much
I like
postage do you put on it?
Do you
I can
mail, do
take
you
it to
hand
the
carry it in? Do you mail it, do you hand carry it in?
I hand carry it.
Who checks your signature?
Huh?
Who checks your signature?
My staff, actually, and it really is checked. There's two ways it's checked in our office. It's checked electronically, and it's checked by hand, and we do both. Our electronic can challenge the signature, and we set it a little bit tighter than the banks on a check, so it has to match what's called a 3-point match on the signature, and that'll pass. But I do have my staff view every single signature that goes through to make sure to say, yes, that is correct.
I did want to mention, just to kind of give some thanks also, because not only for coming today, we're so close to the election, but as Wes and Barbara and others can tell you, regardless when it is, whether it's like 2 days before the election or whatever, and we'll have questions, you're always there to answer the questions.
Yeah.
And very helpful on election night. Obviously, we know we're going to get that first dump of votes, the 8:15 or whenever it's going to be. But it's been very helpful in kind of letting us know when to expect the next group and that sort of thing, because we pretty much never have a final vote total, and we have to be done by about midnight. But it helps us a lot as far as what are we going to do in print, what can we do on the web, and I know there are TV stations and others that are asking for your time too, but just very helpful for the media. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
We certainly try to help, but remember this election, and I hope you spread this news, because it's a two-card ballot, and because because there's twice as many others, you're not gonna have midnight results. It's just not gonna happen. And it's caused me two issues. One is logistics and getting the ballots to our counting center on election night to count. So I have to get them from the receiving center to our actually counting center, which is out in our warehouse out at the airport. And so it's actually changed my whole thinking on how we're gonna do this. And so we're in that process now.
Well, and I mean, I think it's a natural tendency for newspapers to get anxious and say, why don't you have those results? But it's more important to be right and fast.
That's right. How late should we plan on being here? How late would you recommend we plan on being here for those reasonably final results? 2, 3?
About 3.
About 3.
About
Okay.
3:30, and that's if my staff does not misplace a box.
Right.
Or I have a poll worker, and this has happened in a previous election, they take the ballots and they put it back in the ballot box, and when they get at the receiving center, the ballots are left in the ballot box and it goes into the truck, right? And that truck, it's always got to be the one in the front, right?
Right.
So now, at the end, I have what's called a bingo board. I know every single precinct that has come in. I know where it's come in at. I can follow the bouncing ball so I can see where it came into the receiving center, it came into either the warehouse or whatever. And so I can follow that whole process as it goes through, which is very interesting. And just as a funny story, you were asking for funny stories. One day, one election, we had the box in the front, and it took us quite a while to dig it out of the truck. But another election, it was 11 or 12 o'clock, and I noticed that one of the precincts wasn't in, so I talked to the inspector. They said, well, we sent a person, they took off in the car with the ballots. Well, get a hold of that person. We're getting ready to send a sheriff out to the precinct, to that person's house. Finally, we get a hold, well, they had to stop and shop, do grocery shopping. So now it's like 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I don't have the ballots to count yet, and I can't create the semifinal results until I get those ballots in. So we send quickly a sheriff over, grabs the ballots, came back, we counted it, but boy, that was a late night.
Many years ago, I counted, I believe Carter was running for president, and we got done around dawn. It was
Yes.
a long time ago.
Yes.
I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't want to do it again.
Yes.
It was a long night, but it was a lot of fun.
That's one of the things that's changed for us as a newspaper. Obviously, in the old days, we would have been dead in the water if we didn't have results till
Right.
3 o'clock, because obviously we have to be, but we keep people late here. And, ideally, when people wake up at 6 in the morning, you're going to have the final results on our website. So it's just kind of, makes for a long day, but it's nice to be able to have these results.
Well, I can tell you, I'm actually up at about 3 a.m. Before election day. I go through election day, I go through election night. So for me, this election day is going to be a 24-hour day. So you can imagine.
Red Bull?
Yeah. No, what's the other one? And then, and lots of coffee. And so then when I get done at 3 a.m., I go home. I have to be back by 8 o'clock because the news services are waiting me to talk to something about a race or an issue that took place, so they want to be there and to look fresh. After a long day, 24 hours, and you get about 2 or 3 hours sleep and you're back at the office. It's a little rough, but I seem to manage. But for me, it's fun. It's absolutely, I just enjoy it. I mean, the people are great, and to know at the end of the day that it's done correctly, what a feeling.
Are the ballots picked up from the precincts multiple times or just the one-time pickup?
The ballots from the precincts are, usually the precincts close. They do the rosters, they add up the unvoted and voted ballots. They're put in the box, and then they go to a receiving center. So it's one time. However, when we get to the receiving centers, what happens is the first precincts that come in, the closest precincts as they come in, when we get 30 or 40 precincts in, we'll bring them into the office because I I need to start counting because you guys want results.
Yes.
You know? Everybody, and it's not only you, but it's the candidates going, where's the results? So you see this long pause from 8:15 to about 10 o'clock before I actually start seeing results. But if you've been down at our warehouse, you know what happens. The ballots come in, they go through the inspection, they go through the counters, then they're stacked up on pallets, but at that point, then I can start to upload cards and give you results.
It's great to see the young leaders of tomorrow here, and their question was, it really deeply affected my mind. I never even thought about it. The booklet that you are holding under your hands, my God, I said, I got to vote, I got to read this book. We need to do something really about that.
You know,
They
this
had
booklet,
a very good question.
just so you know, that just for some inside information, this was printed by the state of California. The state of California utilized printers in Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, and as far as way New Mexico to get these printed because they're so thick. And if you notice, these were late. And that's because they were trying to print them and they were trying to label them. And it took them a while to actually label because of the thickness of these, to actually handle these to go through. And to let you know, these cost $4 or $5 a piece to print and get out.
Why
to
didn't
you.
they have the record to it? We got the best printer.
Hey!
Good announcement, yeah.
You guys probably could have got in on that.
There you go.
And so if we opt out, we're obviously saving the county
And the state,
And the
whatever,
state, yeah.
sure.
$5.
Sure. Yeah. Well, then my sample ballot, which is separate from this, is another $3 per vote. So there's, you know, and that information you put together.
If you opt out, are you opting out of the sample ballot as well, or just the informational book?
One or both.
Good.
Okay.
That's great.
If you notice, only one of these come to the household versus the sample ballot booklet you get
Each one.
two.
Wes, you had a
I
question?
just have one more question.
Sure.
Monday is the deadline to register to vote, so do you have anything for people, do you have any advice for people? Because there's probably going to be people who wake up Monday morning and say, hey, maybe I should go register. What do they need to know or do?
The best thing that I can tell them is to register online. Now, you can paper register, however, if you register online, the minute you hit send, it's going to the Secretary of State, it's being processed, and I will have it back the next morning in my system so I can get you a ballot or whatever you want, you know. So the best thing, and I forget what it is, register to vote, it's probably in here somewhere, it's, you know, register to vote, ca.gov, I think, or something
Just
like
type
that.
into Google and you'll find it.
Yeah, but it's very easy. We've really perfected it over the years. The 58 registrars in California have worked with the Secretary of State very closely. When we first came out, the website was pretty clumsy, but boy, we've done a lot of great improvements, and it is now very good.
And if someone really wants to physically fill out the form, will they still be registered if they fill it out in your office that day and you
Oh,
they
they're
turn it in?
good. They're good to go. They
Okay.
fill it out in my office someday, yes.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you, and you know, if you have any questions, please feel free to call my office. You know, the Registrar of Voters, San Joaquin County. Give me a call and talk to me. I'm available. I'm a real person, as you can see, and I do answer my phone calls. I may not get back to you right away because I'm in, obviously, a lot of meetings and speaking and talking to people. So I'm always conveying, you know, trying to get the word out, but I certainly do get back to all my phone calls. And, you know, it's just a wonderful thing to have people to vote. And I hope that you young folks, that you register and you do vote.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.